Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today's video is going to be another delightful excerpt from my secret language podcast that I do over on Patreon. So in episode 5, which came out just yesterday, I got a really good question about what I'm going to sort of call language learning motivation burnout, right? Which can also apply to basically anything else, not just languages. But my answer was kind of interesting in that I attacked it from two very different angles. And I also covered procrastination, right? Because I think that there's a lot of overlap there, and we might even conflate the two. So sometimes we might feel kind of burned out or like we're lacking motivation, but it might actually be that we're just kind of procrastinating. And so I tried to tackle this question from two angles. One is sort of slightly more intuitive, the kind of advice and thoughts that you might expect, but hopefully will still be interesting nonetheless. I did keep it very nice and concise. But the second part of my answer, I think, was also kind of interesting. And even for me, there was a bit of a realization as I was going through my answer, where I tried to use some of the discoveries I've made for myself recently outside of language learning, right? Where I have experienced some pretty serious procrastination or anxiety, or even a little bit of burnout with motivation for making certain films, right? Like my short documentary pieces I've done. And I had some wonderful realizations over the last few months that just helped me to overcome those things so effectively. And so I wanted to share that and apply it to this sort of language learning context. So I hope you'll enjoy the video and my response to the question. I would love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments. And before we jump in, I've got some coffee here that I just brewed. It is fresh. And cheers to another amazing week of language learning, of life. And of course, if you want to get access to all of the 1-hour episodes of my secret language podcast, along with my weekly language learning diaries, where I do all sorts of cool behind the scenes stuff. We've got free downloads. There's so much fun. It's really cool. So feel free to join over there on Patreon if you would like. But for now, I will say cheers and enjoy the video. Welcome back to the Secret Language Podcast, exclusively available here on Patreon. I'm your host, MacPherson, and this is a show where I answer your questions about all kinds of topics ranging from language learning tips, methods, and advice to personal stories from my own experience learning and speaking languages out in the world. So grab yourself a drink, maybe a snack, and let's jump into today's episode. Okay, so Jeanette says, "Hi Robin, at the moment I'm struggling a little bit with my language learning. I feel like I'm losing my motivation. My work days are longer now, and in the evenings I'm tired and don't feel like studying. What should I do? Take a break? Only study when I feel like studying?" And that's from Jeanette. So I think this is a great question. It's a very good topic. And the first thing that comes to my head personally is I think you should try to do some stuff that is fun. Right? When we think about motivation, that's really important. So if someone was a beginner, because I don't know, Jeanette, what your level is. If you're a beginner or, lower intermediate, then like this might even just mean watching a movie, right? Even with subtitles in your native language, right? Doesn't matter, right? It could be music, it could be TV shows and dramas. It could be reading a book that just takes place in a country that speaks your language, or it could be a translation of a book that was written in your target language. Anything that like you really, really, really enjoy and that connects you to that target language, right? So reading a book that you just absolutely adore, and you're reading it in your native language, but it was originally in your target language, that alone sometimes can really motivate us. Like, I just would love to read this in the original one day. I love TV dramas and movies and stuff because, again, you can actually hear, like you get to do both. You can enjoy the subtitles, so you can still enjoy the content and the story, but you're hearing the language, you're seeing, people speak it, and then you can also get very interested in a place. through that, right? Because you're seeing all these beautiful cinematic shots of all these different places, and it can be such a fantastic motivator for everything from wanting to learn to speak to wanting to go and visit whatever place it might be, and or it could involve food, right? It could be so many things, right? Like for me, I've talked about this a few times at different moments in the last year, but over Christmas when I was doing Spanish and I was watching the Street Food Latin America documentary series on Netflix, even that, just seeing, I remember I was watching one in Mexico, and it was a whole episode about tacos and all the different types of tacos and all the different taquerias, the little taco shops, and just this wonderful, rich culinary culture, or a subculture, I guess, even just tacos. Not only did it make me so inspired to speak Spanish and study Spanish, I was listening to it, made me want to go there. Maybe it made me want to go get tacos somewhere, anywhere, right? It just made me want to connect. And for those of us who love language, then that's the natural thing that we're drawn to at the center of all of that motivation. So that's one thing I would say. Now, if you're a slightly more advanced learner, it could be graded readers. If you're an intermediate, high intermediate, whatever, it could be reading a real book. It could be watching a movie with subtitles off. But maybe just not having the pressure of studying it. Maybe just letting it wash over you, right? Just turning on a film or a TV show, no subtitles if you want, and just enjoy it. Just watch, just see what happens, see how much you can understand. But just anything that you just enjoy. That's one thing I would recommend doing, because even if that is taking you away from, your core language study, at least it's, first of all, you're staying in contact. You're still spending time with the language and many things around it. But again, it's building that momentum. So it feels like a break, but it's so much more than that. Now, another thing I would say is when it comes to actually studying, look at the things you're doing and look at why. So for example, I have dealt a lot with procrastination this year when it comes to my filmmaking projects, in particular, the documentary style ones. And it was kind of crippling me. It was just really hard to, and I was having a hard time, and I did lots of reading. I watched a bunch of documentaries and all sorts of stuff. And I realized that for me, it was because I was pushing myself so far out of my comfort zone, right? Those projects were so big and scary to me because I just never done anything like that. There were so many filmmaking techniques I was using that I'd never done. It was such an overload of just stuff that was new and just not really knowing whether it was going to come out nicely or not. Now, just identifying that for me was enough, right? Realizing that, okay, there's a reason why I'm feeling this way. And then sort of seeing the good things, realizing that, okay, yes, in some ways, I'm less efficient right now. I'm pushing myself so far outside my comfort zone. There are some negatives in the sense that I'm slower, right? I'm procrastinating. In my case, I chose to see it as a good thing because I said, okay, on the other side of the coin, I'm going to be learning so fast. I'm growing my skills so incredibly fast by pushing myself like this. And just that alone helped me to stop procrastinating. Just realizing, okay, I'm not failing. I'm not being lazy. I shouldn't, be upset with myself or beat myself up. I'm feeling this way because I'm making a genuine effort to make great work and to improve myself. So that's another thing is look at the things that you're doing in your target language and try to see if you can make a similar connection. Maybe it's that the stuff that you're studying, maybe it's just boring for you. Maybe it's just not working. And that might be the reason why you're lacking motivation. Because when you have those longer work days and you're busier and you're more stressed out, maybe that's the time when you need to rely on motivation a lot more to get you through stuff. And so maybe things that are kind of boring and not working, well, before you could just kind of do them, but now that your reserves are low on energy and on motivation, like you realize that maybe it's not working for me. Again, maybe it is too hard, right? I often talk about the value of struggling, but I also am the first person to say, at the end of the day, that's not for everybody, and it's not for all the time, right? There are certain times when it's great to go seek out the struggle, enjoy it, embrace it. But there are also times when maybe that's not the right thing, and this goes back to my point from, I think it was episode 4, where I gave an analogy about yoga, right? And about how over time we kind of get to know our bodies. We're able to read the signals, but we also are equipped with tools to respond to those signals. And so sometimes you realize, today I just need something else. Like my body's not responding to this other thing. I need to adjust and adapt. So those are 2 different pieces of advice that I think tackle the problem from 2 very different angles. And I hope that's helpful, right? And, I would love to hear your thoughts on that, Jeanette. But good luck and keep going. Don't give up. Unless you really need a break, then you should absolutely feel free to take a break, right? I'm not one of those people that's like, whatever you do, don't take a break. Like, no, take a break if you need a break. But these are great things to consider as well.